Hello, y'all. I am fortunate enough to be here today with Dan. Dan, I'm not going to steal your thunder. What are you doing here today, and who the heck are you?
Great questions. So I'm here to have a chat with you, Ryan. That's what I'm doing here. But mainly I'm here because for the last 18 months or so, I have made a profession out of coaching men. And I did that because I've been through a bit of a quite a big transformation in my own life. When I used to work in the media, I used to work for the BBC. I burnt myself out by prioritizing my career over my health and over my relationships and over myself. And since then, I've been kind of rebuilding myself and my life and on a self-development journey and a personal growth journey. And somewhere along the way, it occurred to me that I could take others with me and that I might be able to help fellas in the same situation as I was. Because I've suddenly realized that this pursuing success at all costs and success defined by somebody else, mainly those who want you to drive up the economy, is killing us. Literally. Do you look at the suicide rates of men, you look at cardiovascular disease in men, it is literally killing us. So if I can help just one guy not commit suicide or not die of hard cardiovascular disease, then I am a happy man.
So tell me a little bit more about that moment that you made that decision, because I think for a lot of entrepreneurs out there that have been in corporate for, many years, that is one of the most difficult decisions to say, wait, this thing I've been told I'm supposed to do my entire life, no, you know what, I'm not going to do this anymore. How did you go about that decision, and what did that look like for you?
It was a process, Ryan, so it didn't happen overnight. As I say, I burnt out, and that was back in 2018. And so the turning point for me really was a massive panic attack. So I sat on my doorstep and I thought I was going to die. I couldn't breathe. My heart was trying to leap out of my chest, and it felt like the world was closing in around me. And that was life hit me in the face with a brick, because I'd refused to listen to the more subtle and quieter messages it had been trying to send me for a long time. So I knew I didn't feel good. I knew I didn't feel the way I was feeling wasn't right. But rather than deal with it and face it, like a lot of men, I ran away from it. I escaped it, avoided it, and I used whatever I could lay my hands on in order to do that, and most of it very unhealthy. So that was the turning point, right? And that's where I picked myself up, having been hit in the face with a brick, and thought, right, something has to change here. This isn't right. And so, my career was amazing. I got to broadcast sport, right? And I love sport and I love broadcasting. So dream job, right? It was amazing. I've been around the world broadcasting sports events. I've worked on football World Cups, the Olympics. I've just worked on the Olympics again. Done some amazing things, been to some amazing places. So it took me a while to realize that the job was part of the problem, right? And it wasn't a problem per se. First of all, my mindset was the problem. And second of all, it just wasn't the right path for me. My path is all about directly helping people and impacting lives. And it took me 2 or 3 years to get to that point, Ryan, because I'm a bloke. I didn't reach out and ask for help. I didn't get professional advice and support, which I should have done much earlier. I did eventually, but it took me years. And gradually I started to unpick things and peel back the layers and turn my attention inward to find out what was going on for me. I started to realize that the corporate world and that job and that working 50, 60-hour weeks and working for somebody else, and that wasn't for me. So then the pandemic came along. So sports broadcasting stopped for the first 4 months of lockdown. So I had a lot of time on my hands. And this is when I first started to reach out to get help. This is when I first started doing coaching programs and things like that. So I did a thing called Life Book, where you look at 12 areas of your life and you basically build out your vision for your future. And a lot of it quite surprised me, because it wasn't the vision I initially held for my future. So I realized that I wanted more peace and tranquility in my life. I realized I wanted to live differently. I wanted to have a more positive impact on people and on the planet. I wanted to live more sustainably, be more self-sufficient. I wanted to escape that corporate world. I wanted to escape somewhere where people and companies had a hold over me and had leverage over me. So I literally have changed everything in my life, Ryan. I realized eventually that the job wasn't for me. Then during lockdown, the BBC had to make cuts. So they offered voluntary redundancy, which I took. I got a decent payout because I'd been there nearly 20 years. So I used that money to reinvest in myself. I did lots of training, coaching courses. I learned neuro-linguistic programming. And that drive for self-sufficiency meant I wanted to set up on my own. Again, it took me a while to to realize what that would look like. For a while, I thought I might use my contacts and my skills from my media job and work, as a public relations consultant or media consultant, and perhaps for sporting bodies and things. And I did kind of investigate that for a while. I kind of got into esports for a while. I was at the BBC. I was the first director to do live esports on the BBC, and I became a big advocate of it, especially in lockdown when all the actual sport went away. So I wondered whether I might consult esports companies and providers to teach them how to get themselves on mainstream outlets. Turns out they're not actually that interested in doing that. So it didn't bring me a lot of work. I did some copywriting because I've been a writer and a communicator all my life, so I'm pretty good at that. But none of that really was fulfilling me. And I was still working as a freelance contractor in TV. But I always knew I wanted to do something where I could impact people's lives directly. And when I left the BBC, as part of their redundancy process, they give you a career coach. And I was fortunate enough to get a guy who was just super amazing at what he did. He was much more than a career coach. First time in my life, he got me to challenge my beliefs, to find out what I really value, what I really care about, and why. And it was that experience that made me think, I think this is what I want to do. I think I want to help people this directly, because the transformation he facilitated me was quite remarkable over quite a short space of time as well. So I kind of found out from him, what do you do? How do you do it? Where did you learn to do it? And sort of went away. And again, over a period of a couple of years, invested all that money from the BBC, did all my training. The idea was to kind of ease myself out of TV and into a coaching business, sort of start as a side hustle. Mm-hmm. That never quite worked out, because part of the thing I was telling you about earlier, the change in lifestyle, meant I moved 300 miles north from England to Scotland, where I now have 12 acres of land. I live in a 200-year-old shepherd's cottage. We're pretty much off grid. I still get my electric from the grid, but as soon as I've got solar panels and wind turbines, I will be off grid. I grow a lot of my own fruit and veg. But the trouble was with that move, thank you, is it took me away from all my TV work. So that meant I had to go full 2 feet first, jump off the cliff and get going with the coaching, which in a way was good for me, because I think probably still 18 months down the line, I'd probably be still doing it as a side hustle. But I had to do it, and I had to make money from it, and I had to learn very quickly about how to run my own business. That was a bloody steep learning curve, Ryan. Having been an employee all my life, I had no idea where to start in a lot of ways. And I thought, because I came from the world of media, I'd know how to communicate and I'd know how to do marketing, but it's a very different thing, talking to a mass audience, talking to a niche audience. So yeah, I've been learning all about that and how to do it. It's felt overwhelming at times, but fortunately I have other sort of tools these days. And I always have a coach, Ryan. I'm addicted to coaching, both giving it and getting it. And having a coach has helped me get through those things and overcome them and simplify everything, because I was overcomplicating everything. I was trying to do a bit of everything every day, and that's impossible. And yeah, and I've got to work with some really amazing guys, Ryan. I've got to help facilitate some fantastic transformation, and it's so fulfilling and so rewarding, and it's actually a privilege to do and to be there, because actually I don't have to do much. I don't have to do an awful lot of work. It's just about holding the mirror up, asking the right questions at the right time, and challenging people and challenging their thinking and their beliefs and all the stuff that guy did for me. And it turns out I'm pretty good at it. So I've got 100% success rate. I've never failed to get somebody where they wanted to go, which is marvelous, and something I should probably talk about and tell people a lot more.
Yeah, so that explains a lot about the journey, and I think there's a lot of growth that an individual needs to go through, from going to being, an employee told what they're do, how to do it their entire life, to now it's, I want to do this. Now you just got to figure it out. Good luck. So for you mentioned something really important, which was your willingness and eagerness to invest in coaching, to pay for other people's experiences to get what you're looking to get, and cut that time out so you don't have to spend 3 years learning how to do XYZ. They just help you. What role has coaching and investing in yourself played in this path forward, that you think, well, without this, I would have lost XYZ, or this would not have been possible?
Yeah, it's been massive, Ryan. And I've spent tens of thousands of pounds investing in myself and investing in coaching and coaching programs. As I say, I'm quite addicted to it now. I always have at least one coach that I'm working with. And what it means is I can get out of my own way quicker. It means I can discover the things that I believe that are holding me back. It means I can peel back the layers easier and quicker. I think had I not got that sort of expert help, I'd probably still be sabotaging myself. I'd probably still have a mindset that didn't serve me. And I would be getting in my own way, because that's what we all do. We create a belief system, normally when we're children and when we're young. We don't choose it, it gets given to us, really. And we all have these horrible, corrosive core beliefs that we're not enough, that we're not good enough, they're not man enough, or not enough of a man. And those core beliefs are deep rooted in us. And around them are lots of other beliefs that spring up from those. And for me, coaching is about identifying those, flipping them on their head, changing the script, and getting you moving faster. So I used to be the king of procrastination. I was an over planner and an under executor. I was an overthinker. I thought thinking made me clever. It didn't. Actually, what makes me clever is using my intuition, is using my conscience to guide me. And we all have that, Ryan. We all have that in a guidance system. And yet we're taught from a very early age to override it, to rationalize, to be logical, which is fine, because logic and reason are what separates us humans from the rest of nature, right? But the big mistake we make is by thinking we are separate from the rest of nature. So what coaching's really helped me to do is peel back all that rubbish, get in touch with my core being, because we are human beings, right? We're not human thinkings. We're not human doings. We are human beings. So that's what coaching has helped me do, get really in touch with who I am and my being, and be really aware of who I am being, because who I am being will create my life. That's how we create our lives. And most of us do that unconsciously and with lack of awareness. And what coaching's really helped me do, and having coaches and always having coaches, is it increases my self-awareness. I work on my self-awareness daily, because that's where my superpower is. So the more aware I can be of what my innate intelligence, my guidance system, is telling me to do, and it doesn't work like that. Actually, it doesn't tell you what to do. It kind of gives you signs, and it leads you, and it pushes you, and it pulls you. But the more we use logic and reason, and we're systematically taught to do it, to override those things, the more mistakes we make, the more wrong paths we go down, the more we complicate our lives. And there's a really good example that I use of that. When I worked at the BBC, I was working for BBC News the morning of do you remember the tsunami back in Boxing Day, 2004, years ago? You might not, Ryan, you're a lot younger. Anyway, there was a big tsunami that happened from an earthquake around Indonesia and went out and caused just devastation around that part of the world. Now, the animals, they knew it was coming. They scarpered. The humans, they didn't listen to their inner guidance. They stood and watched the big wave. Went, oh, what's this? And of course, the humans died. The animals didn't, because they followed their inner guidance and they got to higher ground. And this is a good example of the problems. And, us, these mind-made prisons we trap ourselves in, thinking creates for us. And that's the big thing for me with coaching, is it helps me see through that, and it helps me just be my genuine, authentic self. And then I attract the life that I want.
And for the people that are meant to find you, that you best help, that they really need your help, or there's such a clear pain point that they're having, how do they find you? What does that journey look like? It seems like you got the fulfillment down. That seems like that's the easy part for you. The hard part seems like, how do you find these men that have this pain point that you know how to solve, and get them wanting to park the ego for a second and say, hey, I admit I have this problem. I want Dan's help. What does that journey look like for your clients?
Yeah, and that parking the ego, Ryan, is a big issue. And what I've realized when I'm creating clients is I have to be patient. It's a long process. At the moment, everything I do is online. So people find me digitally. And everything I do nowadays is on LinkedIn. I used to be on Facebook and Instagram too, but I didn't find them very productive platforms for my message of what I want to do. So every client I've created has either been invited by me from LinkedIn to come and have a conversation with me, or has been referred to me by somebody else. So that's the only way you can get to work with me, is by invitation or referral. But the best place to find me and understand what I talk about and what I do is on LinkedIn. So either I find people via doing outreach, So on my email list or on LinkedIn, or they come to me via my content. They see my messaging, they see what I talk about, they see my offers, and then they approach me. So then I invite them onto a call away from LinkedIn. And normally what I do is I let them experience coaching, because most people haven't. And there are a lot of kind of myths and rubbish and bullshit talked about coaching, and especially life coaches, right?
Yeah.
So I try not to call myself a life coach, because I know it's a kind of loaded phrase these days, and conjures up images of 23-year-old blokes, white blokes with dreadlocks living in Thailand. Yeah. So I let them experience coaching. We sit down, we have a 90-minute, 2-hour powerful deep dive breakthrough coaching session, where I find out what's really going on for them, where for some of them, the first time in their lives, they're turning their attention inward and really finding out what it's all about, getting a bit of clarity. Who are they? What do they really care about, and why? Not what do they think they should care about, but what do they really care about? And generally from there, then we'll explore what working together would look like. Now, I don't work with everybody that I talk to, Ryan. What I know is, and some of the mistakes I made early in my coaching career, was some people aren't very coachable, and especially men. Men are very cynical, very stubborn. And sometimes it's just not worth my energy and effort, because they're looking for a quick fix, and they're looking for me to tell them what to do, to act like a consultant, to give them a 5-step plan and go, right, do this, do this, do this, do this. That's what we love to do, men. We love to tick all those boxes and go, right, got that sorted. Yeah, that's my health sorted. Got a life coach now, so got that box ticked. But what they don't really want to do is do the hard yards, to turn attention on themselves, to go deep into the recesses of their psyche, where the stuff about themselves they don't want to look at works. And that's where the real transformation happens, when you're prepared to look at that stuff, to peel back the layers, to accept it, to acknowledge it, to process it, and to deal with it. Not in a therapeutic way. Therapy is a very different discipline, and I am not a qualified psychotherapist or psychologist. But what I just help blokes do is facilitate transformation. And in order to do that, you've got to know what stopped you from getting where you want to go in the first place. So that's those unconscious systems, your belief system, your value system. That's the stuff we need to look at. And sometimes that's hard work, and it can be painful and not fun. So I need to know that guys are fully invested. They're really ready to do it. They're so sick of where they are right now that they're going to do that masculine thing, and they're going to take action, and they're going to take charge, and they're going to take control of what they can control. Because what I do know is there's very little that we can control, but what we can control is ourselves. We can control our thoughts and feelings. We can control our behaviors and what we do. And that's very much what I help blokes do. But yeah, so that's kind of the process of me meeting someone to then becoming a client.
Gotcha. This podcast is called the Speaking to Expand podcast. And for the aspiring speakers out there, or the professional speakers that maybe, or even entrepreneurs that are trying to figure out how to fit, or how could speaking benefit their business, or maybe it's not for their business, but they need to figure that out. What role has speaking had on your business? For example, podcast appearances like this, or maybe summits, or speaking on stages, and that kind of thing.
Yeah, it's massive, Ryan. And, as well as a coach, I call myself a creator and a speaker, because that's what I am. I'm fortunate, Ryan. I love public speaking. I'm not like a lot of people who find it as frightening as death. I really don't. I enjoy it, and I enjoy doing things like this. But communication is everything, especially in the modern world, right? So it doesn't matter how good a coach I am, and I'm an exceptional coach, by the way. If I don't know how to communicate that, then I'm never going to get any work. I'm never going to have any clients. I'm never going to be able to make an impact. I'm never going to be able to help and serve people unless I can speak and I can communicate. And, things like sat here talking to guys like you has been brilliant for my business, brilliant for my visibility, brilliant for my online authority, for people to actually listen to me, get to know me, hear my voice, see that I care, see that I'm not some guru who's going to tell them to eat quinoa and have ice baths every day. See that I'm just a normal bloke like them who's been through the same things as they have. And to be able to do that, Ryan, is vital for my business. It's absolutely vital. We have to communicate. And, I regularly do LinkedIn lives as well as podcast interviews. And I have to be able to do that. I have to be able to do it and do it well. Get my message across in a succinct, engaging and understandable way. Again, I'm fortunate. I'm naturally a good communicator, Ryan, but I've also spent 20 years working in media. So I'm an advanced communicator. I'm very good at it. And I've been practicing communication pretty much since I was 12, 13 years old. And I thought I wanted to be a journalist. And, public speaking, again, it's something I'm now getting into as part of my business. I'm starting to work with charities. And there's a charity in the UK called Andy's Man Club, who I'm hoping to do a bit of work with. They're opening a branch near me, in a town near me called Peebles in the south of Scotland. And yeah, I'm hoping to go and do some talks there. I've been talking to some guys who work over in Guernsey who want me to go over there and talk to their CEO about what I do and about my philosophies and stuff. And so it's, this is all about creating visibility, because without visibility, as I just said, Ryan, I'm weighing in the wind. Nobody's going to just pick me out the yellow pages anymore, because that's not how the world works.
Now, that's interesting, because a lot of coaches and speakers, they kind of got the leveraging podcast appearances, virtual speaking, live streams, those things, they got them down pretty well. Some people still struggle with it. Like you said, some people are just better at public speaking naturally. Some people aren't as good at it and they are very scared of it. But you mentioned going into speaking in public in person, right, as opposed to digitally. What different impact on your business do you think the content of you speaking in public on stages in person will have when you leverage it on your socials, assuming you're going to do that after you have those gigs? How does the in-person speaking compare with podcast appearances like this, for example?
Yeah, well, I think it will have a similar impact in terms of, you're right, I will leverage it online and I will put clips up and I will tell people I'm doing it, because, that builds my authority too.
Yeah.
Actually, I think what's important for me is to get in front of live audiences, because there is always something not quite there in digital communication. You and I sat here having this chat, we've connected, we're having a good chat, but there is still something that we would get from a face-to-face communication that we're not going to get from a digital communication. That's the way things are. So I need to get myself out there in front of people to make real connections, so people can feel my energy, Ryan. Not only hear what I'm saying and know where I'm coming from, but they can feel me. So, they're going to be attracted and they're going to go, this guy, and they're going to tell their friends, there's this guy and he told me about my belief system and wow, it's blown my mind. You need to look him up. And it's that I need, to get my philosophies out there, to get people talking about me, to get people referring their friends to me, so I can weed through and find the guys that I can really help and I can really make an impact with.
And what kind of path, and this is more for the aspiring speakers out there that maybe they're at that similar position you were at, with their working the 9 to 5, they're really successful what they're doing, but there's something in them, they're like, this is just not it. I don't want this anymore. I know something in here is telling me this is not for me. I want to build a business where I can help people that have suffered from similar things in the past, that I have very specific problems and challenges that only I know a personal solution to, but they're intimidated by the path forward and the role that speaking on a public stage will have for them. What guidance or knowledge would you give them that would validate, say, hey, it might suck, but it's worth it for you, your business, and your life and your path forward? Here's why.
Yeah, I mean, what I say to clients and people I talk to who are fearful of things like that is, what's the worst that can happen? But the very first thing I would tell people to do, if they're thinking of doing that, is go and speak to people. Go and speak to people that have already done it. Go and speak to coaches like me. Go and get some therapy. If it's paralyzingly frightening for you, go and find out why. Go and heal that, because what it is that's psychological damage. So as humans, we have a kind of negative bias in our outlook, and that comes from our evolution. When we first jumped out of the trees, the humans that didn't get eaten by cats and bears were the ones that had the negative bias, were the ones that saw it coming, were the ones that hid themselves away. So they were the ones that, passed on their genes to the next generation. So it's perpetuated, right? So often when presented with an opportunity like speaking in public or doing something different out of our comfort zone, fear comes up, and that happens to everybody, right? Now, being fearless is not having fear, right? It's feeling the fear and doing it anyway. So when that part of your mind kicks in, that paralyzing fear, it's about understanding where that comes from, what it is about you, what's happened to you in your life that you've given meaning to, because nothing has meaning in and of itself, only the meaning we give it. And what emotional charge are you holding on to? Because that's what we do. Something happens to us, it confuses us, it conflicts us, it traumatizes us. we create a meaning around it about ourselves. And often if this happens when we're young, it's a very skewed meaning because we have a very, tiny experience and narrow perspective as youngsters. And we hold on to that emotional charge and it stays with us forever unless we process it and we let it go and we heal that trauma. So if you've got some trauma to heal, go see a therapist. If actually you just need to find a way to manage yourself and manage that fear and feel the fear and do it anyway, then I would absolutely recommend getting a coach, because a coach can help you do that. And there are some really good specialist coaches now. There's a couple I can think of straight away, connected with on LinkedIn, who specialize in helping people with public speaking, because, not only is it a great thing to be able to set up a business, if you've got a burning desire and a passion about something, you can change lives. So you need to get out and start speaking to people. But for people who are in the corporate world, speaking is vital these days, isn't it? Yeah. Presenting to other companies, pitching, speaking to higher ups, public speaking is a vital skill. So yeah, the biggest, if you're looking to really change everything and step out of a corporate world and set yourself up in business, then talk to people who've done it before. That is the best piece of advice I can give you. And work out why you want to do it. Really understand, drill right down into, keep asking yourself for what purpose for each time you give yourself an answer. Right, why do I want to do this? Right, I want to change the world. For what purpose? Well, because I hate injustice and I want to bring people more freedom. Why do they need more freedom? Well, that would make for a better society. And the more you build that out, the more motivation you're going to have, the more you're going to understand what you're doing, the more each time a hurdle gets put in your way, because believe me, many will, you find a way around it. You find a way over it. You'll find the right help at the right time, or you'll have inspiration. So yeah, that's, I think, the best advice I can give to anybody who's just starting out.
So let's say someone hears that advice and they respond with, oh shit, he's right. I'm all in. Let's do this. And they say, okay, I got my business kind of figuring this out. I'm kind of familiar with LinkedIn because in corporate, I got some experience with it. But these speaking gig thing, where the heck do I find a speaking gig? What guidance do you give them for that?
Well, I think he's all about positioning yourself, Ryan, right? He's putting yourself out there and telling people this is what you do. So there's a guy I'm working with at the moment, and he's not a coaching client as such. He's a mentee, so I'm mentoring him, and he's a recovering addict. And speaking is what he wants to do. He wants to take his story everywhere, tell people how he ended up where he ended up, and save lives and change lives in the process, which is amazing. But he used to manage construction companies. He's got no idea how to do it. So I'm kind of helping him at the moment to do that. So what we've done is we've decided who he wants to be. Do you remember we mentioned earlier about being, right? Yeah. So that's what you've got to do. You've got to almost fast forward your life 3 to 5 years and go, right, I am a successful speaker. How does a successful speaker live? What do they do? What do they say? Where do they go? Who do they talk to? Put yourself there and feel it. Don't just think it, feel it. Step into that future version of you and feel what it's like to be a successful speaker. Then from that, you'll get action. You'll get inspiration. You'll start telling people that's what you do. You'll set your LinkedIn profile up and your other social media profiles up saying, I'm a public speaker. Here's what I talk about. You'll start to build your authority. You'll start talking about what you're going to talk about in digital form, in video form. And the more you put yourself out there, the more you have a very clear vision for what you want to do in your life, the more the stars will start to align. The more you'll find opportunities come to you, doors start to open. Now, don't get me wrong, you don't sit there and it all lands in your lap. You've still got to take action. You've still got to make choices. You're still going to have to overcome fear, because anything worth doing is going to scare the living shit out of you. Believe me. And especially if you want to go around speaking, it's going to scare the living daylights out of you. But it should, right? Because anything worth doing is going to take you out of your comfort zone. So you need to get used to that. You need to accept you're going to be out of your comfort zone, which is why it's worth getting professional help if you can, why it's worth having a coach who can guide you through, who can take you through those steps each time you're hitting those barriers and you're getting overwhelmed and you're feeling scared. But yeah, the most important thing is to project yourself into the future, because your mind is very clever. And when you tell your brain, this is who I am, your neurons will change. Your wiring will change. Your reticular activating system will start looking in different places. You'll start seeing things you never saw before. You'll start finding opportunities that you never would have spotted in a million years, because you've primed yourself and your mind and your brain to look for them. Our conscious minds have a very small bandwidth, so they don't run the show. Our subconscious or unconscious mind is what runs the show. So that's where you do the visualization in that unconscious part of your mind. Then that's the real powerful part of your mind. That's the part of your mind attached to the source, to everything else, to how everything works. You put that powerful message out, a very clear vision about who you are and who you want to be, then life will have a way of arranging itself for you. Because one of the big misconceptions a lot of people have is that life happens to them. We're all victims of circumstances and events, but it's not true. We've created those circumstances and events by our choices, by the direction of travel we've set. And most of us do that completely unaware and completely unconsciously. So the more you can work that awareness muscle, the more you can find out about yourself and what your saboteurs are. We all have learned saboteurs that we've picked up along the way. So the more you can get out of your own way. But yeah, the key is that really crystal clear vision that you can feel, and your action will come from there, and your words will come from there, and you'll start to attract the right people and the right opportunities.
You said something there that was a really powerful quote, and I want to repeat that back to you. You put that message out there, and life will have a way of arranging that for you. That was really powerful.
And it's true, Ryan. And if you told me that 5 years ago, I'd have told you to F off and what crap balls and woo-woo rubbish, right? But I'm here to tell you, it's absolutely true. So this life I've created for myself, I created it in there first, right? I visualized it. I put myself in that position of being a successful transformational coach who was self-sufficient, who owned land, who lived somewhere peaceful and quiet. A couple of years later, here I am. And I use tools like vision boards. And I have a constant vision board on my mobile phone that I carry around with me everywhere I go.
Yeah.
About the next 3 years. And then I'll build another for the next 3 years and the next 3 years. Because life happens for you. It really does. But if we're sending, a lot of our thinking is fear-based, right? So if we're focusing on what we don't want, we're going to get more of that in our lives. That's how life works. If we're focusing on what we do want, we're going to get more of that in our lives, because that's how life works. So, you need to get that professional help. You need the therapist, you need the coach to organize your thoughts and your emotions to build that awareness muscle. Then you can start to creatively visualize your life. Now, I don't like using a word like manifesting, because again, manifesting has become a loaded word, right? And people immediately dismiss it as woo-woo bullshit. And it's not. It's science backed. It's backed by modern quantum physics and things like the observer effect. When you look at that, we can literally bend reality. Now that seems nuts, doesn't it? It's a very logical. Is it a right or left brain when you're logical? I always forget. A very logical science person would look at that and say, well, that can't possibly work, right? If this, then that, if this, then that. And it's like, well, trust me, it does, because I'm living proof that it does. And I've understood the concept for a long time that life happens for you and not to you. Now I'm living it, Ryan. Now my life happens for me every day. I surrender to life. Don't get me wrong, I have a very clear direction of travel. I work very hard on my business and I work very hard on myself. I want to be the best I can be. I want to be the best coach I can be. I want to bring as much to the table as I can for my clients. And that takes work. But the more I put a very clear message out to the universe or to source or to God or whatever you want to call it, the more the stars align for me, the more opportunities feel like they drop in my lap. I was telling you there about a potential gig I've got coming up, going out to Guernsey, where there's a lot of wealth in the UK. It's kind of offshore. So there's a lot of potential clients out there for me. That dropped in my lap. So a mate of mine that I'm connected with on LinkedIn connected me with someone else who invited me on a podcast. This guy knew this woman who ran the podcast, heard the podcast, liked me, reached out to me, introduced me to a friend of his. And now I've got this opportunity. I had to do nothing other than show up when life gave me the opportunities and choose it. And that's a really good example of life happening for me. So I'm going to be getting these public speaking gigs coming up because I put the message out there that that's who I am and that's what I do. And then the opportunity came to me. I didn't go seeking it. I didn't go looking for it. I didn't go hustling, ringing people up and reaching out. You have to do an element of that, absolutely. But put the message out there and let life bring the opportunities to you.
What is the message that you would want to take the opportunity to put out on this podcast for anybody listening that maybe knows someone or knows someone who knows someone or is someone that it is a decision maker in the right place that can make something happen to you, for you, What is that 3 to 5 year vision that you're on, and maybe someone that's listening can help make that happen for you? Stages, business, all that kind of stuff.
Sure. Yeah. So my big mission, Ryan, is to change the world, and it's to change the world one man at a time. Now, what I can see from Western culture is that there's a very particular problem for men right now. We live in this old 20th century paradigm of serfdom where we flog ourselves to death in order to make a few quid, mainly for somebody else, sometimes for ourselves to amass stuff, which is meaningless. And we sacrifice ourselves and our well-being in the process. And not only do we do that as men, we celebrate it. We think it's clever. We think it means we're strong. It brings a certain machismo, right? And as men, we're busy building reputations. We're busy building status because that's what the culture tells us we should have as men, right? As providers, that's what we should do. And it's killing us, right? It is literally killing us. When you look at the suicide rates among men, and especially 35 to 55, it's horrendous. When you look at cardiovascular disease among men, the stats are terrifying. So this old paradigm of 20th century work and leadership is literally killing men. This is what I want to change. Now, my company is called Positive Masculinity, and it's called that because I have a very clear philosophy and idea of how men can operate in the modern world. And it's about prioritizing yourself and your well-being. It's about knowing who you are and then being that person. Because as we've just been talking about, the more you can be that person, the more life will line up for you. The less you will feel like a victim, the less stressed you will be, the less frustrated you will be, the less overwhelmed you will be. And actually, it's about finding meaning, purpose, fulfillment, and as blokes, we want to do stuff. We want to make stuff. We want to create stuff. They're the drives. They're the masculine drives we have. They're not celebrated anymore, Ryan, in our culture. And I understand that things have had to change in terms of equity and equality, and I'm on board with that 100%. But we've thrown the baby out with the bathwater. We've stopped celebrating the masculine qualities that keep our world moving. When you look at lockdown, it tended to be, and I know this is a generalization, it would have been the men that were out there still sweeping the streets, still clearing up the rubbish, still doing the dirty, horrible jobs that nobody else wants to do, still doing the labor. That's what men do. And that's great. And it should be celebrated. I'm not saying that only men do that and only men should do that. I'm not saying that at all. But these masculine qualities, these masculine drives should be celebrated. But they should also be used positively, Ryan. There was a phrase that came around a decade or so ago, and I hate it now, toxic masculinity, because people have taken it to mean that masculinity is toxic. And it bloody isn't. It's a very natural part of us. It's, we're mammals. It's an intrinsic part of our evolution because we need it. We need masculinity. We need balance to femininity. Now, I absolutely understand why we need to promote feminine qualities more. And, the fact that we literally used feminine qualities as insults a few years ago was not good for our culture, and particularly not good for men, because something that I talk about a lot as positive masculinity is embracing our femininity, is embracing our feminine sides. We're all a mixture of both. We need the balance. We need what people call soft skills, and that's something else I hate. And that's what I'm all about. So I'm about men embracing vulnerability as strength. I'm about men doing the things men want to do and the things that men do well in a positive way, in a way that contributes. Now, if you're sat here listening to this and you think there's a way that, there's somebody I could talk to, there's a group of people I could talk to, there's a podcast I could go on, there's someone you should connect with me with in order that I can make this happen and make it happen on a wider scale and have more impact, then please get in touch with me. You can find me on LinkedIn, and my email is danglidecoach@gmail.com. Drop me a line, and I'm all about collaboration. I've realized power comes from collaboration. I know humans are at their best when they collaborate and not when they compete. So if you're listening to this and you think, yeah, I know Dan to talk to, or I'd like to talk to Dan, or I'd like to get Dan to come and talk to my company, or I'd like to get Dan to come and talk to my men who are leaders and who are reaching burnout and who do have toxic habits and behaviors, then absolutely come and find me. You can find me on LinkedIn. I will have a website in September, finally, that I will launch. So that'll be another place you can find me. And that will also be down by coach. Or positive masculinity, search that. It seems to be a term that isn't widely used. So if you Google positive masculinity, you'll probably find me.
Awesome. Last question I have for you here, and I always end the episodes with this question for the audience. What is one tip or piece of guidance that you've taken all these years to learn, and you find it so valuable that you would want to leave with the aspiring speakers, the professional speakers, or the entrepreneurs that speak to grow their business?
Yeah, my one piece of advice I give everyone, Ryan, is slow down. Slow down. We're all in such a rush these days. Everything's so busy. Our heads are so full and our thoughts go at 100 miles an hour. And you get paralyzed by that. And we also get caught up in doing a lot. And sometimes doing for the sake of doing, or doing because we think we should, or we must, or we have to, we ought to. Says who? Slow down. Start asking yourself, for what purpose? Start asking yourself why. And if you're sat there and you're in a corporate job and you're thinking, I could do more, I've got something to say, I've got a story to tell, then get out there and start doing it. Start on social media, start putting yourself out there, start being fearless, start being bold, start taking action, get moving. But let that action come from stillness. Slow down, get still, get to know yourself. Meditate, use mindfulness practices to slow that thinking mind down, that prison that we create for ourselves. Pick it apart, pull it apart, get help to do so, get professional help to do so, but just slow down.
Well, guys, if you're listening and you found that valuable, and you've got that one guy friend, or that one, as Dan calls it, that one bloke that is in your network that you think needs to hear this, go ahead and send this to them. You never know. You might hear that one thing that he needs to pivot his life in a certain direction, or whatever it is. And you could be doing him a huge favor. And if you're a woman, and maybe this is your husband or your boyfriend needs to hear something like this.
That's important, Ryan. We need, because men and their egos often will hide away from this stuff.
Yeah.
We need women to advocate for this stuff, because they will help men make the right decisions and the right choices, because men will listen to the women in their lives. Yeah. So it is important. It is important that you plant the seeds and you chip away until the one day where that guard drops and the ego does step out the way and they are ready to get the help that they need and they want, and to live life on their terms and to live positive masculinity, to be the man that the world needs, because the world needs every single one of us. We all created uniquely. We all bring unique gifts and talents to the table. We need to be authentically ourselves, because everybody else is taken, and contribute to the world. And it's so important, Ryan. I've had people reach out to me and say there was one bit of content they read of mine and it changed their life. They didn't need to come and spend thousands of pounds with me coaching. They just read one bit of content. So it might be they listen to this and it just shifts their perspective, that little bit that they need, and they're off and running, and they're making a positive contribution to the world and having positive and deep connected relationships.
Well, there you go. Guys, thank you for listening. And Dan, thanks for taking the time to do this, and we'll wrap it up here, y'all. Cheers, guys. Thanks, Dan.
Brilliant. Yeah, thanks for inviting me on, Ryan. It's been a privilege.